thing made up of many parts. Disciples and seekers, saints and sinners, people who are lost, people who know precisely where they are, and a fair number of us who threw away the map a long, long time ago. We are all here. And in this moment, in this hour, in this week, we are the United Church of Christ in Key, where no matter where we are on our journeys, no matter who we are welcome here. Friends, let's take a moment and welcome each other in this space. Friends, it has been a busy, full, and challenging week for many of us. The news we got last Sunday from Orlando about so much loss of life, to the one-year anniversary of Mother Emanuel in South Carolina. There's been a lot of grief in our nation this week. And so for our call to worship and our prayer of confession, I'm inviting us to do something a little bit different. You'll see that printed in your order of worship are the words and music for By the Waters of Babylon, which is taken from the Psalms, the 137th Psalm. It's a beautiful, beautiful setting of it. And I'll invite all of us to sing that after each verse of our opening prayer. It's a time of mutual prayer together. And Bev, I'll ask, do you want to run us through that one time so we can get a hear for it? We have come together longing to rest in you, to put aside the busyness, to put aside the worry, to feel, to sit, to weep, to sing, to remember. God, hear our weeping, tears beyond words, a hurting world beyond understanding. Anger and hatred roil and seethe. 49 of our LGBTQ siblings have been slain. More death that overshadows our memories of Mother Emmanuel just 1 year ago. And we weep and we try to hold them in our hearts. All of your children who have been cut down too soon. We remember. God, help us to remember the loss, the suffering, the countless deaths that we callously lump together, trying to set order to the chaos. Sandy Hook, Aurora, Mother Emmanuel, the Pulse. Lives put hastily into order that we might be able to remember it all when it feels so overwhelming. Help us to remember. Help us to remember you. Help us to remember your Son. Help us to remember your kingdom. Help us to hold it in our hearts. Let it be the salve that heals us. And let us be a part of the healing of this world. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Friends, let's take a moment in silence to sit with our own confessions. Amen. Friends, when hatred is so in our faces, it is easy to believe only in hatred. It is easy to believe that there is only shadow and no light. It is easy to believe that there is only despair and no hope. It is easy to believe that there is only anger and no love. But friends, there is good news. As hard as it is to believe, You are the beloved children of God. You are forgiven, you are loved, and you are loved for a purpose. Loved so that we might try to love this world. This world that needs all the love that we can bring to it. That is the good news. We are loved and forgiven and free, that we might love one another in this whole world. Rejoice in that good news. And friends, let's rise as we're able and join in singing hymn number 548, When the Church of Jesus.
The scripture reading for this morning is taken from the book of Galatians in the New Testament, chapter 3, verses 23 through 29. Now before faith came, we were imprisoned and guarded under the law until faith would be revealed. Therefore, the law was our disciplinarian until Christ came, so that we might be justified by faith. Now that faith has come, we are no longer subject to a disciplinarian. For in Christ Jesus you are all children of God through faith. As many of you as were baptized into Christ have clothed yourselves with Christ. There is no longer Jew or Greek. There is no longer slave or free. There is no longer male and female. For all of you are one in Christ Jesus. And if you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's offspring, heirs according to the promise. May God bless the reading of this word.
thank you to our bell choir. That was absolutely lovely. Friends, I want to tell you about Emma May, and about Marty, and about Cake Camp, and about ministry, and about the letter M. Many of you know Marty M. She is a longtime member of this church, part of the church school committee, a partner of the UCAMA group with Mount Selinda, host of the monthly book/wine club, parent of two of our great youth, and important for us here today because she is the creator and director of MoCo's fabulous Cake Camp, which teaches kids in our community important lessons about love and community and belonging. And they choose to teach it through the arts and theater. That is my own description of Cake. I'm certain it would say something different on their website, but as a parent of kids who have been a part of Cake and the cupcake version for little kids, I can tell you that it is pretty accurate. They use the arts to teach about love and belonging and community. They use the arts to find ways to love our kids and to teach our kids about what it means to love, what it means to be a part of something. And while there are many definitions of ministry, what they do certainly fits my definition of ministry. Anytime we are loving each other, we are ministering to each other. As we are building something, whether we are doing it with prayer and song, or with food and shelter, or with wine and cheese and books, we are ministering to one another when we love each other. And so what they do at that Cake Camp certainly fits my definition of ministry, even if it is not maybe a word that a secular organization like MoCo would jump to. Jesus taught us that we could love one another, and that if we did, if we were so bold as to love one another, then we might just find that we live in an entirely different world. Indeed, that we might be co-creators in an entirely different world. It is no small thing. It is a promise that we can live lives free from all of our own self-inflicted suffering, lives free to dance in whatever nightclub we choose, lives free to live the fullness of life. And the key, we are told, is to begin by loving each other. And so anyone who is doing that, anytime we are loving each other, I will call that ministry. Even if the ones doing the loving might choose a different word, might understand their purpose differently, if we are loving each other, then I will call it ministry. So even though MoCo may not, even though they do not teach about faith or religion, they teach about love. And I can't imagine Jesus minding that nobody ever hung a cross around it. MoCo is a beautiful ministry. It is a place where kids are welcomed, where kids find a way to belong, where kids are loved. I have been glad to have my kids be a part of it. In fact, last year, my child was spending a week at camp in this building. And so one day, I knew that he would be up here on our second floor, and so I came up to say hello. And I was pleasantly surprised to find that his teacher, teaching the creative writing section that he was in at the time, was Emma May. Now, most of you probably do not know Emma May, but a few of you do. Emma just graduated from Keene High School. She has been involved in theater projects across this town throughout her high school career, and so even if you don't know her, you may have seen her on a stage at one time or another. Or, if you were here a few weeks ago, when our Open and Affirming Committee hosted worship, if you got to have one of the rainbow cupcakes. Those were made by Emma May. And they were delicious if you get to have one. She makes cupcakes on the side, makes cupcakes to order as a way to earn some extra money. And she has kind of become my go-to source for cupcake supplies, which comes up way more frequently than probably than it ever should. She has also been in this building on countless occasions as something of a friend of the youth group. Emma is not a Christian, and she has never joined the youth group in any official capacity. She never went on any of our big mission trips. And yet every year, when it was time to haunt the church for Pumpkin Fest, or when it was time to serve some meal, time to get into some service project, Emma had a way of showing up. I have joked with her that she has, for these past 4 years, been our most officially unofficial member. In fact, it was about a year back that our youth ministry committee was talking about how we might better reach out to other kids in our community, kids who are not connected to this church. And so I reached out to Emma to try to see our program through her eyes. She was gracious enough to meet me for coffee and answered all my questions about how we looked to a teenager who was not already a part of our group. It was an incredible blessing on my ministry because Emma could answer questions that none of our kids could. It's easy to know what we mean to the people who are already here, what we mean to our official members. But it took someone on the outside to speak to what we were to all the people